Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our next panel. Now, global climate issues are of immediate concern, from rising global temperatures to natural disasters. And India is said to be one of the most vulnerable countries, in fact, to climate change. Well, at the forefront of tackling these challenges is the state of Maharashtra, whose sustainable journey has been underlined by some very impressive renewable energy projects, as well as empowering local communities. And that is what we are going to be talking about in our next panel. Right, ladies and gentlemen, please give a very warm welcome to them. I'm going to do the quick introductions now. First and foremost, we have Abhijit Ghorpade, who is the Director of Climate Action Cell for the Department of Environment for the Government of Maharashtra. Very warm welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We also have Koyel Mandal, the Director of Climate India at the Children's Investment Fund Foundation. Very warm welcome. We have Chandra Bhushan, the President and CEO of iForest International Forum for Environment, Sustainability and Technology. A warm welcome to you. We also have Akshima Ghate, who is the MD of RMI. A warm welcome to you. And Ashwin Gambhir, who is a fellow at Prayas. Really, really fantastic lineup we have for this conversation right now. So let's go straight into it. We don't have much time. Abhijit, first and foremost, I'd like to ask you the first question. Now, as we mentioned, the government here really is leading the way and is making huge strides. We've got afforestation, electric vehicles, solar. Tell us a little bit more about the significant steps that you're making right now, and what does the next decade look like?
Thank you, Laura. India, as you know, is a signatory to the landmark Paris Agreement 2015. And Honorable Prime Minister of India announced the goal of realizing net zero carbon emissions by the year 2070. By way of NDCs, we are committed to reduce the emission intensity of India's GDP by 45% by the year 2030, and also reduce our dependence upon fossil fuels in electricity generation by 2050. And as India's leading state, Maharashtra's climate goals ought to be in alignment with India's NDCs. Maharashtra is also the most industrialized state in the country, contributing the highest to national GDP. It's the largest subnational economy of $437 billion US, aspiring to be a $1 trillion economy by 2027. Now, how to reconcile these two goals is the real challenge, and it would require massive energy transition, which is reflected in the state's action plan on climate change, which has been recently prepared. It talks about various adaptation and mitigation strategies related to various departments. For the first time, it introduces the state cooling action plan on the lines of India's cooling action plan. It also talks about propagating the decentralized renewable energy technologies, such as solar dryers, solar HP pumps, milk chillers, vertical fodder grow units, to disseminate green energy and also to enhance rural livelihoods. And for the first time, it introduces the concept of climate finance, eventually to culminate into climate budget. We also plan to go ahead and come out with the city climate action plans and the district climate action plans. I'm glad to announce that while Mumbai announced its city climate action plan in 2021 itself, recently we have released city climate action plans for Sholapur, Nasik, Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar, and one more city, Nasik, Sholapur, and Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar. These three plus Mumbai, these four cities with the support from WRI India. We are focused on cities. Why? Because we are the third largest urbanized state in the country. Almost 45% of Indian state's population lives in urban areas. And we are focused on Amrut cities, the cities with a population of over 100,000 each. Why? Because 76% of the urban population of the state is living in these cities. So we plan to come out with city climate action plans for these Amrut cities and all the districts of the state. We also recently came out with the decarbonization roadmap for these Amrut cities, particularly for the energy and the building sector. You know, Ashwin was instrumental in drafting the state's EV policy. It was launched in 2021. We plan to come out with this EV penetration in a systematic way, in a strategic way. First of all, in public transport, in three-wheelers and tempos. Very soon, by 2025, Mumbai's municipal transport will go electric. And the state transport corporation is also procuring about 5,000 electric buses. We are promoting because we are aware that the planet's carrying capacity is limited and we need to live within our means and optimally utilize our resources. So we are promoting circular economy parks at 7 places in the state. At Nagpur, I'm glad to announce that acquisition has begun for over 1,000 acres of land parcel.
Wow.
And recently, we also have, sensing the importance of bamboo in carbon sequestration and also in enhancing rural livelihoods, we have announced the Chief Minister's Task Force on Environment and Sustainable Development. And very soon, you will see a policy to that effect.
Absolutely incredible. Some really impressive strides that are being made, especially to get to that target of net zero, which is an ambitious target. But if you're moving in that direction, it does seem possible. So congratulations on everything you've been doing. Very impressive indeed. Moving over to Koyel very quickly. As a philanthropist, what exactly is your role then within this environmental mission? Tell us a little bit more about that, and how do you work with the state to create this vision as well?
Thank you, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here. I keep saying this often, but I don't think it gets said enough. What India is planning to do is unprecedented. The government has set 2 very ambitious goals ahead of us. One is to become a developed nation by 2047. The second is to become achieve net zero emissions by 2070, which essentially means that we want to decouple our growth from our emissions. And if you look at the history of developed economies, no other country has done this in the past. Every other country has first achieved a certain level of growth and then started taking care of climate change. So this is very unique in that sense. And once it comes to ambition, implementation of this vision, it comes down to the states, the subnational level. That's where the rubber hits the road. And we just heard from Mr. Ghorpade about Maharashtra's vision. So where does SIF as a philanthropy come into the picture? Since 2008, the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, we have been collaborating with local partners in co-creating solutions that support the government's ambition in transforming children's lives. And climate change is about improving the quality of life of this generation and the future generations. And we have seen that when we are able to bring together different kinds of stakeholders in supporting government vision, there is always the transformational impact. And that's exactly what we have done for Maharashtra as well. We brought together partners, many of whom are on the dais today with me, and other funders as well, in supporting Government of Maharashtra's vision and accelerating change in the different sectors that we just heard from Mr. Ghorpade. These are transportation, industry, power sector, and also to ensure that this transition is just and equitable. That's very important for not just India and Maharashtra, but all our other states. And in doing so, of course, we have already seen early results. We heard some in the morning session, some from Mr. Ghorpade, and we'll hear more from our partners now. But just to highlight a few, we are already seeing Maharashtra emerge as a leader in electric mobility. The share of electric vehicles reaching almost 10%. Within Maharashtra, Pune is taking the lead with the share touching almost 16-17%. Other cities such as Nagpur, Pimpri, they are also following Pune's lead. We also saw several cities in Maharashtra launch their climate action plan. Similarly, we have seen a lot of improvements in energy efficiency, in the building sector, in industry sector. And there's more to come, and I don't want to steal the thunder from my colleagues here, so they'll talk more about all these different sectors. But just to say that this is SIF's approach to working with different partners, bringing all of us together to support the government vision, and this is what we keep doing in all other states and at the central level as well.
It's all about collaboration, it's all about partnerships going forward, it always is. So moving over to Chandra, now as Maharashtra is leaping towards this electric vehicle transition, that we've already heard, obviously. And I was also reading that the adoption of electric vehicles has, Maharashtra has the highest amount actually in the whole of India, which is impressive in itself, and it just shows how much effort's being made. So as we leap towards this transition, as well as the adoption of renewables, how do you make sure that there's financial stability and scalability at the same time while also improving and promoting inclusive growth?
Thanks, Laura. It would be a challenge to entertain the crowd after a session where people heard from silver screen to laptop screen, and then to discuss climate change with this group. So I'm really sorry, we are going to give you serious stuff, okay? Let me start by saying that we are in a state which is very progressive as far as climate action is concerned, and I think Abhijit has very clearly laid that out in front of everyone. But we also need to recognize that the challenge of climate change in Maharashtra is quite stiff. It is one of the most vulnerable states as far as climatic impacts are concerned.
Right.
In fact, different regions of the state has different vulnerabilities. Marathwada is drought prone, Konkan is flood prone, Mumbai will get impacted by sea level rise. So instead of looking at the state, if we look at regions, then we will understand the real vulnerabilities. So one, it is a highly vulnerable state. Second, it is also one of the most fossil fuel intensive state. 10% of India's greenhouse gas emissions comes from this state.
Wow.
It has the largest fleet of coal power, biggest automobile industry, 7th largest coal producer. On every fossil fuel indicator, Maharashtra will be right at the top. Now, it has a dual challenge then. One, it has to adapt to climate change, and which Abhijit talked about in terms of having city action plan and district action plan that the state is making. But on the other hand, it also has to transition from fossil fuel to green energy. Now, this transition is not going to be a very smooth transition. This transition is going to be a disruptive transition, especially in a state which is heavily dependent on fossil fuel. And therefore, one of the things that the state needs is it needs a transition plan, and a just transition plan. And I'm here to sell you my report. You all can read this report. We just published few weeks back.
Great.
On what just transition would look like for this state. Let me end by giving you few key findings of our report. First is that not all the sectors are going to get impacted. Over the next 10 years, we see coal mining, coal-based power, and automobile facing disruptions. Similarly, not all the regions will get impacted. There are 14 hotspot districts, and there are 2 or 3 regions. For example, Nagpur, Yavatmal, Chandrapur, the western side of Maharashtra, which is likely to get impacted first. Pune is another hotspot. And the third is about 1 million formal workers will get impacted. So the impact of this transition on Maharashtra's economy is going to be quite severe. And therefore, having a just transition and policy and plan is important. We have recommended to the state that they should come out with a comprehensive policy and plan so that this transition can happen in a smooth fashion and with least disruption.
Yeah. And it's all about policy and plans. It's going to take a while to get there, but we've got to start now is always the message, isn't it? Right, we are running out of time, sadly, so let's move on over to Akshima. Wonderful to have you here. Now, recent data we were talking about electric vehicles and how there's the highest number here. What has driven this change? Obviously, we've heard about the state and the sort of climate issues here. But what has driven this change essentially in your mind, and what has been the role of government versus the private sector versus a CIO like yourself?
Yeah, thanks Laura, and thanks to the organizers for the invitation. I don't think there is a story of versus here. You cannot bring about any change, which is like, fielding one stakeholder against. So I just feel what we have seen in terms of transition in Maharashtra's electric vehicle adoption is an and versus story, which is government and private sector and civil society actors have come together to really bring about, to some extent, start of the disruptive change that Chandra just talked about. I think it is very critical that policy, which is government, society, which is the civil society actors, and industry and market come together. So these 3 pillars will be very critical, and that's what we have seen in whatever so far has been Maharashtra's electric vehicle journey. Right now, the state is, amongst the top in terms of electric vehicle adoption, also amongst the top in terms of charging infrastructure, and has the lowest EV tariff when it comes to supporting and enabling adoption of electric vehicles. It is also seeing one of the biggest investments when it comes to startup ecosystem, and the OEMs also making those investments. So I think it is really a story where I would say policymakers or government championed a cause which is of clean energy transition, of which electric vehicles or clean mobility will be a critical pillar. That policy preparation process, I felt, was one of the most inclusive in terms of engaging with civil society players and more importantly with industry players, because you need to have an industry which is prepared to cater to the demand. So we have had that policy champion, but we've also had, I would say, a big support from local governments in Maharashtra. I think Mr. Abhijit talked about Maharashtra being almost 50% urbanized, and I feel city governments in that sense in Maharashtra play a very, very critical role. What we have found unique in Maharashtra is amazing leadership and championing of electric vehicles caused by cities like Pune, Mumbai, Pimpri Chinchwad, Nagpur, which are right now running the biggest electric public transportation fleet in the country, without much of government support and intervention which has been coming from central government. It's all been state and city led in this state. There has been championship in terms of converting cities into EV ready cities. So all in all, I would say so far last 2 years transition journey for EVs gives us hope, what Chandra said about the dual challenge, that there is merit in picking up the tough sectors of clean energy transition for the state and enabling a very conducive policy environment, along with engagement with the market players and civil society actors, to have a very strong actionable vision and policy frameworks for the next few years.
Thank you so much, Sada. We are running out of time, so I desperately want to head on over to Ashwin, but some really brilliant points there. Thank you so much. Right, you've been long-standing with the government here as well, and you do a lot of research, and you work alongside them. So from your point of view, what are the sort of big focus areas for the state to deliver growth that's both sort of robust and also green at the same time? And how does, being part of this collaboration, how are you helping deliver?
Thanks, Laura. It's great to be part of this collaborative, and thanks to SIF for getting all these partners together. But very recently, the electricity regulator, which is at the forefront of the energy transition, given where the cost of renewable energy has really fallen, that is at the forefront, and the regulator has recently notified a target of 43% for renewable energy by 2030, and a big push from that is what Maharashtra is leading the way in solarizing its entire agriculture sector. So the recently a Mission 2025 was launched by the Deputy Chief Minister, and by 2025 September, the target is to solarize all of agriculture, and around 8,000 to 10,000 megawatts of solar power is in the tendering stage and will soon be approved. And that itself is an investment of around 35 to 40,000 crores. So as Chandra Bhushan was saying, the transition is not going to be easy, because the scale and the pace at which we need to really move is unprecedented. But a lot is really happening. But as Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal was also saying in the session before this, you need a lot of reforms and changes, because the sector is going to be fundamentally very different. With the cost of energy storage, particularly battery storage, going down, industries and commerce is going to be able to procure their own electricity, green electricity, which is likely to be more affordable than the electric utilities which provide you electricity presently. So the fundamental role or the business model of the electricity utilities is going to change. There are going to be immense market pressures for them to change. And that is where I think state governments will have to come forward to define regulatory frameworks which are balanced towards all stakeholders, but which accelerate green growth, and which are not picking winners, as Mr. Sanyal was saying, whether it being one technology or other, but looking at it in a system kind of view. So I think that it's off to a great start, but we'll have to keep at it in terms of research.
Sadly, we have run out of time. We cannot thank you enough. It's really incredible just to see how collaboration and cooperation works and the ambition and the drive that you're all pushing forward. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.